Everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. Today we have another episode and another special guest, but this time, Iker, you've been on before, so it's a little bit of a reintroduction, but a different style of episode. So we'll start off with the introduction for yourself, and then we'll get into some of the key topics that we'll discuss today.
For sure, Chad. A pleasure as well. Thank you for your invitation. I like this idea. I love talking to you, as I said on the last episode. And it's great to be back here again. And let's get into it.
Do you want to quickly just kind of introduce from your side, like your background, what you're working on at the moment, just so people can kind of get your kind of perspective on things? I know, especially as we get into some of the topics, it'll make a lot of sense in the near future here.
Yeah, sure. So, Iker Nacenta, Mexican over here, 25 years old, financial. I studied business and finance, kind of a really financial aspect. I really love, the industry, and I love getting into the finance view of everything. I'm a sports enthusiast as well. I played soccer practically my whole life. I ran a marathon. So like mixing, sports, soccer, especially in my professional experience. I currently work in a firm that specializes in portfolio management. So mixing both things is kind of my dream. So really glad to be here and speaking about this topics is kind of something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think the blend of conversation last time was really good. I think you've kind of covered the Mexican side of things, myself more the American Canadian point of view, and I think as a whole, it's interesting to dive into some of these topics. And for those of you who are coming back to this episode, last week we did something similar with Ethan Riley on just some of the key topics this week. Last week we covered like the Google Pixel and Salah kind of moment that happened during the Premier League game, the Liverpool game. We covered like Patrice Evra going into the MMA space. We covered the Chelsea front of shirt sponsor. So a lot of the kind of interesting topics. And this week, I think the beautiful thing about the football industry is there's just always information being unloaded. And the beauty of it is people like ourselves that really like to dive into these topics can get involved. So I think the first one that was really interesting, especially from our side in the sports business group that we're a part of, was the Sportico breaking down the top 50 most valuable soccer clubs. And I think it has a really good tie to the kind of next point we'll get into as well, which is the sports revenue league kind of breakdown as well, because it's interesting to compare the actual value of a club or the perceived value of a club versus the revenue and what they're actually bringing in. And I think there's some points that we can kind of tie to. But I think maybe just to start things off, what were some of the key insights that you saw on the Sportico report? What were some of the teams that were maybe a bit of a shock to see on there in terms of like undervalued, overvalued? And then I know I have some of my own opinions as well. So I'd love to hear from your side, and then we'll kind of get into things.
Okay, sure. So first of all, I think that the first thing that popped into my mind is the fact that Manchester United is number 2, even though they haven't won, or they are not the biggest team over the past 5 to 10 years in the world or in England. And I think it's really interesting to see how are they doing and why are they in second place, even though the sporting results are not keeping up with the valuation side or even with the revenue. And also, I don't know if you're gonna like dive into it, but the MLS teams, I think it's fascinating and really interesting to see how these teams are now. Or I think 20 out of the 15 teams are in the MLS. So seeing up the rise and the also the presence of the MLS is kind of astonishing, and especially thinking about the World Cup next year and how they are putting up the league and the country into a spotlight.
I think what you said with Man United was the same for me. Obviously, one of the biggest global brands, kind of, I would say the top 3 are always kind of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man United. Those are the 3 you see. And here it's perfectly laid out. You've got Real Madrid, Man United, and Barcelona in that order. Very close in terms of Barcelona being at 5.7 billion, Man United at just over 6 billion, and Real Madrid at 6.5. But I think the next key kind of point to see in that is Man United isn't a top Champions League team at the moment, not even in their own domestic league. I think you're looking at 16th or 17th. It'll be interesting. They've just, as of the recording, they've just now made the Europa League final. So it seems to be that is sort of their favored competition. Not, I'm not going to try to get into things too deep here. As a Liverpool fan, I could make fun of them probably all day, but I'll leave it at that. But I think at the end of the day, like, I've been reading Sir Alex Ferguson's book at the moment, and to see what they've become over time is incredible. And I think this really portrays to the fact that, look, you don't necessarily have to have the best on the field product. I think if you take, for example, last week, one of our key topics was Wrexham and what they've been able to do over the kind of promotional periods now in the last few years. They're maybe not, they're an exciting team to watch, but they're definitely not the highest quality soccer. If you compare Wrexham to a Barcelona, Barcelona's much better on the field quality, but Wrexham has the overall product. I think now we're in the stage of social media being a big thing. Like Dortmund, I'm looking there at 12, another team with an extremely passionate fan base, but a unique perspective to the football industry. You have the yellow wall that's so iconic. You have a social media team that, from Dortmund's side, really stands out to me. The way they're able to integrate with the Gen Z audience. They don't even necessarily have some of these like world-class players that everyone knows about. They have some of these players like an Erling Haaland that's able to move through the team and go on to bigger levels, but they're not necessarily known for having the best players in the world. But they're still able to capitalize on what they do have. So I'm not sure if you have any other points, but the other big thing for me here is Inter Milan being in the Champions League final and not even. I'm curious to actually see. Yeah. Okay, so they're 15. So for me, as Inter Milan as a topic on its whole is really fascinating. I think if you look at their top transfer records of all time, I don't even think they break $50 million on that, which is a remarkable figure in terms of they're not really spending a ton of money on the field product, and that maybe shows a little bit in terms of their overall value, but they're still producing on the field. I mean, the Champions League final is no easy feat, and I'm curious to see now what actually happens in that game.
Yeah, and just like two more things that I want to kind of relate. Like, as you said, Inter Milan is not even top 10. But the other thing is that you talk about Borussia Dortmund, and I think this kind of relates with Manchester United. Like, let's not forget that soccer teams are more than just 11 players in a field, and that's why Manchester United's over there. I think that the deal with Adidas, with the sponsorship on the shirt, it's the deal is more than 100 million euros or dollars per year. So you can imagine the value of the brand that it has, that Adidas is willing to pay more than 100 million to Manchester United, even though they don't win a single trophy or international trophy apart from the Europa League, probably. but yeah, like I think that's the value of these teams, and Borussia Dortmund as well. That with Puma, they make real amazing campaigns. The merchandising and the licensing of the team is really is global. So that's why these teams are there in the list, even though they don't have the biggest results. And one more thing that I want to say is, like, Inter Miami is 16, but it's kind of interesting to see why they are not in the first place of the MLS, even though they have Messi, Alba, Busquets, Suarez, etc. So I think it's really good to question why not every team that has the biggest stars or the biggest figures like guarantees you a place or guarantees you to be a team with a top tier valuation or something. And that's kind of reflects also in other teams, Atletico Madrid, Borussia, Tottenham, etc.
Yeah, I think for the Inter Miami example, I would say one of the reasons, just from my side of things, would be this was last year's valuation. So I think with Inter Miami building the new stadium, I think in the next maybe 2-3 years, I'm sure they take that over. It looks like Messi's going to re-sign, so I think that's always a big positive.
That would be the best news.
And I think that's probably a big majority of their value. I would be curious to see the impact of a team like now. I guess we've seen the positive impact of Messi joining them, because they were nowhere near a valuation of $1 billion. But now I'm curious to see, okay, in 3-4 years time, if you lose a Messi, what is that? Like, it's crazy how one player can literally change the valuation of a team, but he's done that. And you look at like the league itself. Yeah, I think that's even more accurate. You look at just in terms of his own brand deals, like with Moss, his own drink brand. They're now a sponsor of the team that he's playing for, which is adding commercial value on top of what he's already done. So I think that's interesting, and I think it leads to the point, like you mentioned earlier, 19 of the 50. MLS now has 19 of the 50 most valuable clubs. I'm curious from your perspective, do you think that's because their value is actually of the top 50? Or is it something where they're a closed market, kind of this franchise model that the US has built off of, and that's just the valuation they brought in because of that kind of closed market, where to build another team or to start another team in the MLS now, you're looking at what, maybe 500 million as an expansion fee? At least. So it keeps that value constantly rising. Is that artificial, or do you think there's actually value behind these teams?
I think it's a mix of both things, because right now the boom that is having the MLS is reflecting in this valuation. The deal that they have with Apple TV, with the TV rights, it's huge. The merchandising, it's now global. A couple of years back, it was just kind of local in the US. But right now it's global. You can see people in Europe wearing Inter Miami shirt. You can see people in France wearing the LAFC shirt. And here in Mexico, you can see many Inter Miami shirts. So yeah, I think it's kind of a mix of both things. But the same as you, like what's going to be the impact after the World Cup, after Messi retirement or departure, like what's going to be the impact on the MLS. And one thing is also kind of interesting, because I'm not sure if the MLS will have the capital to keep up with this expansion in the league. Sometimes I wonder if the capital or if the money is going to kind of be in a shortage, if the valuations are going to reflect the things. And also, just one more thing that I forgot to mention, the MLS has many contracts that are global for the league, and I think this benefits, and this is also why the teams are in this list. Adidas, Apple TV. I think also some sponsorships are part of the global campaign. So yeah, that's why I think, and it's great news, because it's saying that the ecosystem and the structure of the league is kind of working, and it's putting the teams in the spotlight.
Yeah, I think the 2 points that come to mind in terms of the MLS is, one, they have the also the closed aspect of the salaries of players. So obviously you have just the three DP players, but everyone else is kind of on a salary cap. That can be expanded, and that would make your clubs much more valuable. If you opened that and allowed it to be like basically unlimited, or something similar to the FFP in Europe, where you have a financial fair play. Yeah, I think that's where, like, you're looking at the MLS in terms of quality, I think is hovering around the top 10. I think they're like 12th or something like that. I think if you unlock that, it's just such a desired market. Not only do players want to play there, but just the overall structure, the commercial ability for players to really build out like their own commercial properties within what David Beckham's probably the perfect example of someone who's come to the league, changed the way the league overall played, now has his own team, has built commercial properties out of it, his own companies, the shows that he's been able to do, and so on. Like it's really elevated what he's done. And I think that's available to really any player at any level. Like obviously the David Beckham is the max of the max, but I think even at a smaller level, you're able to do that. And I think that's maybe where these valuations come to play, where that hasn't even been reached yet. And you're looking at a World Cup hasn't even been reached yet. So I think there's just still so much potential that I think if you break down the revenue numbers, which we're going to do in just a second here, if you break those down, the valuations might not add up, but that's not necessarily the full story of a valuation. Sometimes it's, okay, what is the future value of this product? And I think in this case, that's what the MLS is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think there's no point adding anything else. So I think let's get into the next topic.
Yeah, so I think the revenue side of things is then interesting. So continuing on the MLS conversation, MLS isn't on this list. So I believe this is here. I'm going to pull it up here for the both of us. So we're looking at the top 20 sports properties or sports IP owners in terms of revenue, and you don't have MLS on the list. So out of this list, top 20, you would assume based on how many teams, I think we said 19, was it? Yeah, 19 of the MLS teams are in the top 50 most valuable clubs. Football being the biggest sport, surely that's going to be adding up into them being in the top 20. Not necessarily. So this is where I think we kind of cover our bases in terms of, look, it's definitely not a revenue thing at the moment, but I think the potential is there for it to grow.
For sure. Yeah. And like, I think they are hoping, and I think for us in North America, it would be a great some great news if the MLS kind of keep up with with this like expansion pace.
And what are some of the other, I'm curious from your side of things, what are some of the other interesting points in terms of, again, undervalued, overvalued? One that stands out to me right away is F1. I'm sure if you went back a few years ago with the older model, the pre-Netflix era and what they've been able to do, I don't even think they make the top 20. Now you're looking at a top 8. That's pretty impressive. That's over NBA, over MLB, over the NHL, PGA, Bundesliga, La Liga. Like, those are big names that the F1 has taken over now. But I think it just talks to the point of, like, look, this has truly become one of the biggest global sports, a huge following. We had F1 Miami this last weekend. Like, the celebrities and the people there that you just totally wouldn't have seen just a few years ago. And now it just seems to be like a part of American culture almost, which is such a huge point in terms of revenue and actually bringing in revenue overall. It's quite impressive.
Yeah. Well, you said about the F1. This chart, like, we can be an hour or a day talking about this stuff because I think it's really interesting. I'm gonna kind of list it very quickly, but I think EA Sports for me is really interesting. How a digital or a video game brand or company is there. Of course, the Olympics committee in Paris. It's interesting, but if you understand how the Olympics work, it would be normal. So yeah, last year's the Olympics were in Paris, so that's why they're in the list. Also, TKO WWE, the brand new deal that they had. Yeah. And of course, for me, the biggest US Polo Association, because it's really interesting. And I really take a look into this because this is a brand that it's often related with another retail or fashion brand. But when I was researching, I like kind of mix the like the concepts that this is also part of the Real Polo Association. And even though the sport is not really popular worldwide, the brand like that is related, like directly related to sports, it's here. And most of the revenue comes from the retail part. But it's also like kind of interesting to see this type of company over there. And also, I just want to mention, like, you can see NFL, MLB, NBA, like, and PGA as well, 4 American leagues in the top 20. So, like, I think the Americans are kind of the goddess of the commercial part of the sports, because if you have 4 brands, also TKO is American, NHL as well. So yeah, like, how much can I add? And I don't know, like, all the American sport world should be kind of the Olimpo of the sports, because I think every single country league or confederation like needs to aspire to be this or needs to aspire to have this commercial strength. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add something or you want to comment on something more.
Yeah, a few different points. One, I think the key from the Olympic side of things is it was the highest sold ticketing event in history, which is like it's a staggering point. I think Paris as a whole is an incredible city to be able to host something like that. But again, still impressive. And in terms of the sponsorship and the commercial side of things, I think they also did well. Did you mention that the U.S. Polo Association was the sport itself as well as the fashion brand? Like that valuation is combined.
The association, it's combined, but the sports like doesn't generate
Right.
or it's not part of like it's insignificant part of the revenue. So yeah, the revenue is coming from the retail and the licensing part, not from the sport.
So I'm curious just to brainstorm here, like between the two of us, where could they go with that? Like I think there's potential. Is polo interest? Like I guess you could say this with anything. Was F1 interesting before there was Netflix? Was football interesting to an American before Wrexham and Sunderland Till I Die and Man City shows and so on? Like polo seems to be, look, this is the one on the list that hasn't necessarily been commercialized in that way. I'd be interested to see ways to go about that in terms of, do you do a Netflix show around the sport? Do you find a way to integrate the clothing side of things or the licensing in different ways, different partnerships? Like I think there's potential there of, look, you're earning 2.4 billion just from the clothing alone. Surely there is something you can do in another space, whether it's some sort of match day revenue that you can start to bring. I feel like I was down in Florida not too long ago, and I guess there's quite a big polo scene within sort of mainly just South Florida in general. But again, there's not really this spectator aspect of it being a large sporting property like some of these other plays. So I'm curious, from your end, do you have any ideas or thoughts on where they could go with that?
I think if like just to put it up in a single sentence or in a single idea, if people are buying the brand or buying the clothes, I'm sure they can link this kind of loyalty to the sport. And that I think that's the key, how to link the loyalty of the customer of the brand or that comes from the retail part. How can you link it up with the sport? I think that's the key, because if there's people buying these brand worldwide, why don't you kind of make like a tournament or kind of of like events worldwide so people can show up with their merch or with their brand? I don't know, like it would be really interesting to kind of link the retail part with the sports part.
I think there's so much to break down here. Like I'm just looking. Third place is Hong Kong Jockey Club. Like I couldn't even give you a single detail regarding that. And then near the bottom here, what's also interesting is college sports. So 19th and 20th, you've got the Big Ten at 1.5 billion in revenue, and the NCAA as a whole at 1.4.
Yeah.
Again, I think for the outside listener, in terms of people that aren't in North America, probably quite surprised by that. But I think when you look at college football, college basketball, what these properties are able to bring, this is personally why I was, in many regards, NIL has kind of been back and forth of, is it a positive, is it a negative? I look at it from the player's point of view, where someone like Zion Williamson went all the way through college and was never really paid a cent in terms of what he could, the value that he had could have been in the millions and millions. Now you're starting to see those players being rewarded. I think it's fair. And I think these two, especially opening to private equity now in terms of the college space, this could be a really interesting market. Like we talk a lot about the European football space and investment, like the Wrexham is probably the biggest example of that. But I think it's, for me, what's interesting are, okay, what are these niche markets that others aren't looking at? Obviously, college football and that space is looked at, but I think it's still interesting compared to the amount of attention that is on like European football, for example. I think you're looking at like Ligue 1 as a property that's really suffering recently. So now where can you take your resources as an investor and go elsewhere? And I think properties like college sports as a whole is really interesting.
Yeah, and also because it's a culture, it's kind of also a religion in the US. I've never been to a match or something, but I've seen many videos and I have some family in the US that it's a culture, it's a religion over there. The matches in Halloween where the people get dressed and the players kind of do a dynamic, and I don't know exactly the name, but I mean it's a really big kind of cultural side. I don't know how to explain it correctly, but I think the impact, we don't realize the impact of college football in the American culture, or in the country. And I think this top, like, reflects the impact that sometimes we don't see in, like, in, if you're not there, if you're from another country, you don't see how big the college football is in America.
I think, like you say, we could talk about this for days. I think NFL is also interesting, where they've really gone with a global approach more recently in terms of expanding markets, what they have to play. Flag football is also growing in terms of a new approach and how they can play safely in terms of the youth, and growing that. Because I think what you're seeing with a lot of these properties is whatever's working at the youth now might not be working in the youth in the near future. So football is taking a big decrease. I'm talking American football, and you're seeing the likes of basketball and soccer really growing at the youth level. And I think that's maybe where it comes to play in the future. Obviously, I think like you say, we could go on that forever. But I think the key topic, or the key principle that we wanted to discuss today, which is funny because it relates to the last time you were on the podcast, Club León is back in the news. It didn't take long. There was just a few short weeks, maybe I guess a month or two. But they're back, and there's news revolving around the Club World Cup and what that has to play. I think there's been some interesting points in terms of like the actual dollar figure amounts that have come into play. So if you want to give a general breakdown, I think we should say it's a good shout out for the last episode, that if you want the full breakdown, feel free to go to the last episode. I'll link it down below. Iker did an incredible job breaking that down. But what are I guess you could say, the updates now coming up in terms of what has come to play?
So last episode we talked about the exclusion of Club León in the World Cup, but then, like, the next part of the process was that León was going to appeal this decision made by FIFA, and this week, on Tuesday, the CAS, that is the court of FIFA that attends these matters, just released their final decision, and they said that León is not eligible to play in the Club World Cup. Of course, this is just like the tip of the iceberg, because there are many things below, especially León. Of course, they are really disappointed because they are not going to be part of this prize pool and these amazing prizes that FIFA is going to give to the teams, but also because it's really controversial on how FIFA decided on how they are going to replace León. So I know how you want to address this, chat. But I think, like, maybe just like shooting some facts or bullets, it's just going to be like the best thing. So first of all, León rejected from the World Cup, even though they won the tournament in 2023. This is because they are owned by Grupo Pachuca, which is the owner of another team that's going to take place in the World Cup. That's called Pachuca. So yeah, this is kind of the thing that I think speaks for itself, is that FIFA is fighting against multi-club ownership, and this is setting up a precedent, not just only in the tournament, or not just only in Mexico, but also worldwide. And FIFA is really taking up a stance against the MCAO clubs. Then the other thing, how, like, the way FIFA decided on how the León is going to be replaced is going to be on a playoff game, just one single game between LAFC, that is the team that lost against León in the cup, and against Club América. Club América here in Mexico is the biggest team in Mexico, is the three-peat champion over the last year and a half, and because it was eligible to play against the LAFC is because according to the FIFA top of teams, I forgot the
rankings.
name exactly. The ranking, yeah. According to the FIFA ranking, It was the team best place, number one. But right now it's not number one, but FIFA kind of put on their own rules, saying that only the ranking or the ranking ended in 2024. So yeah, that's kind of why this is really confusing. First, FIFA wanted to make this game in the LAFC stadium. Sorry, Club America is also saying that they want to be in a neutral stadium because they think it's kind of not really fair. And now FIFA is taking a look to play into the AT&T Stadium in Dallas. So this kind of speaks for itself on how FIFA is addressing the product, their own product, and how they are going to take everything out of the players and the clubs in order to get more and more and more revenue. So yeah, kind of I don't know if you want to address something else, but I think this is just the two main topics that are controversial and then specifically related to the topic about León.
Yeah, I think to jump in first on the outside of the business perspective, I think anywhere but BMO Stadium is probably an away game for LAFC because Mexican fans are just more passionate. Even in the US, there's probably going to be more Mexican fans, or at least Club America fans, than there is LAFC. But I think for both teams, a big game. Like if you take everything away from it, it's obviously a big game. We're looking at we were kind of working it out before, but around a $10 million figure for just being a part of the tournament,
At least.
which is huge. And I think what that doesn't take into account is the other MLS teams and the other Liga MX teams. I think there's some crossover with the league, but for the most part, they're all just going to be basically sitting at home waiting for this tournament to wrap up. And so I think it gives you the opportunity to continue to stay fit. You're playing against the best teams in the world. In terms of the commercial aspect and what we've been discussing for the last 30 minutes in terms of revenue coming into play and the actual value of your club, it's arguably massive and extremely valuable for you.
And the exposure, like you're going to have many eyes watching you, seeing your brand. Like of course, it's going to be like taking back. The exposure is going to be global, and the fact that a Mexican team or a MLS team is going to be exposed to a global tournament, I think it's even though you don't see like the tangible or the economic price of the exposure in the long term, I think it's going to be kind of rewarding because like if you have some kind of like I forgot the name. Like if you're really persuasive and you keep up with the competitive side, maybe you're in today's World Cup or in today's Club World Cup, but maybe you win the next cup as well. And if you're going to take part like constantly in this tournament, the exposure that you are going to have is going to be massive. Players as well are going to be exposed to many scouts. If there's a young Mexican player that wants to maybe jump into European football, I think it's a great spotlight. So yeah, I think there are many things addressed into this situation, and I think we as kind of the mortals of the sports, we don't see the whole, or we are not allowed to see the whole picture. I think there are many things below the surface that FIFA or even CONCACAF are not addressing completely transparent. But yeah, I think, well, that's the sport and the federation and the confederation that we have. I don't think there's plenty much to change. So yeah, I think that would be it.
I think it's been like that from the start, really. I think the rules for qualifying for this competition were very loose. You look at Inter Miami, they weren't really going to qualify, then they won the league, but then lost the playoffs and all of a sudden qualified. And I think even across Europe, you saw something similar. I think either way, the tournament's going to be unprecedented. I think everyone's still going to tune in. I think the teams will probably still play their best players. Like I know that's been a question going around. When you're talking about this much money, there's no way a club is not getting influence from the owners and directors to say, hey, look, we need to win this. If basically the only thing that's competitive to this would be the Champions League. But as the bigger clubs, I think you have a much higher chance of at least moving out of the group stages in this. And for the teams that aren't necessarily as valuable or have as good odds to go on, they can still make a big impact and make their name spread globally. Like you're saying, this is a global tournament, and it's going to have an impact nowhere near what a World Cup would be, but I think something similar to that effect where fans in Asia, for example, will get an understanding of LAFC, and fans in LA will get a better understanding of Korean and Japanese teams and African teams and all that have come to play. So definitely an interesting one. And I think this game is going to be it's going to be watched by a lot of people. I think, especially for myself, I think everyone's now intrigued. It's almost become a bit of like a TMZ, like you're seeing, okay, what's going to happen next sort of thing. So who knows what's going to happen there. But I think, yeah, it'll be an exciting game. And I think a good opportunity as well for DAZN and for FIFA to kind of kick things off and start the promotional vehicle ahead of the tournament.
Of course. And I don't want to like be on the FIFA side, but let's remember it's the first edition of this tournament. So like, I'm not saying that FIFA, or I'm not saying, I don't want to be kind of on the team of FIFA, but of course, being the first edition, the rules kind of not very clear. I think it's normal that this type of misunderstandings, if you want to call it, or this type of conflicts appear. And I'm sure FIFA is going to address it. I'm sure FIFA is like learning from their own mistakes. So I think we also need to enjoy this tournament as well. I'm like, in my own opinion, I prefer this type of tournament rather than the club World Cup that was every January. No one was seeing this tournament. They were like kind of just seven teams playing. The structure of the tournament was kind of messed up. You had a game played between the 5th and the 6th place. So I don't know. Like, I really like this tournament, and let's just enjoy it. The first edition. And I'm sure FIFA is going to learn from their own mistakes, and I'm sure the next edition is going to be even better.
And I think as we're talking about FIFA and what we have to offer, and being on the team of FIFA, I guess you could say, the next topic I think covers this perfectly. So definitely an interesting one from my point of view, working with a lot of players in the past in terms of their careers and where they're going. I think the question is almost always asked where, once you start to get to 26, 27, 28 years old, it's okay, have you started thinking of post-career? What's going to happen next? How are you going to deal with retirement? And I think this phase is definitely different depending on where you are level-wise around the world. So if you look at a local player at the USL level or maybe playing MLS Next Pro and just basically just in the stage of being a professional, that conversation is very different to someone that's been in the Premier League for 10 years, has made Champions League appearances, has been able to maybe have a better chance to set themselves up for success versus someone that is fighting basically every 9 months to get a new contract and hope for something again in the near future. But I think from your side of things, you brought up this point. So I think really interesting, first of all, because I don't know how I didn't see it. But yeah, if you want to give us a breakdown of kind of the general overview, what FIFA is offering, and then I think we can get into some of the statistics around it in terms of, is this actually an issue and how are players dealing with it now?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, just 2-3 weeks ago, FIFA launched a program that supports players across their post career. Their post career. They include financial, like, kind of education, entrepreneurships, mental support, etc. So I think it's kind of what FIFA needs to do. It's their job, because of course, I think they realize now that not every single player is going to be financially successful during their short or long soccer career. Of course, not every single player is going to be or aspires to be a director or a sporting director in a team, or also a manager as well. So I think FIFA giving the tools to the players, no matter their background or, well, of course they are soccer players, but no matter if they had a long or a short career. I think that the fact that FIFA is giving players tools to get more educated, more prepared and ready for their post career, I think it's a great addition to the whole FIFA ecosystem. And I think it also gives the players more like kind of certainty about how can they behave and how can they be after playing soccer. And as you said, especially for the players that don't have kind of the spotlight, or they don't have the longer and successful career, I think players that battle between being on first and second division, players that they don't have the big names, or players that they don't get a really big contract during their career. I think this program could be perfect for them, because I mean they can get more certainty about their future.
I think the first thing that comes to mind on this topic is the NFL and what they've had to deal with, I would say, around this like kind of bankruptcy issue and the mental health around it as well, like you mentioned there. So I think I pulled up the stats quickly. I think it's around 20% of NFL players that end up going bankrupt within 3 to 5 years. And I thought the number was even higher, which I think it still might be. So I think from FIFA's perspective, to have I think we called it before the call, like a positive PR move is really what this is. Obviously it's helpful, and I hope it actually is something where they invest in it and it becomes a useful tool for the players. But it's also just a good PR move to help FIFA's image in a time where, like we're saying now, there's a lot of issues around this topic at the moment. And so I think this is important. And I think just some of the key stats, like you mentioned there, 75% of retired professional footballers face financial difficulty within 5 years, which is, again, quite a staggering number. And then you're looking at less than 15% of pro players in the top leagues transition into coaching or media, which is really, from an outsider's perspective, but I would even say within the industry, really one of the only key pathways. Like, you really only see coaching or media. We've already mentioned some of the names: David Beckham, Gary Neville, some of the guys that we'll discuss later on as well. They either went media or coaching. Gary Neville did a bit of both, and that's I think the reality. So I think to have something like this to really educate people on. And the last point, I'll throw it back to you in a second here, but that's really interesting is it also reminds me of the model for FC Nordsjælland and Right to Dream. I've spoken a lot with Emiliano Marcondes, who now plays for Norwich, but he spoke about like the importance of their education system and how much they helped him in terms of he's already planning kind of those future steps, but he's been doing that from the beginning. And just the general, like, you don't necessarily have to plan what you want to do when you retire, but just to know, okay, what are my other passions? What are other parts of either the footballing industry or other industries that I'm interested in that I want to be a part of? And I think just to like have that ideation and just to think of it and have those conversations is extremely valuable for a professional footballer.
Yeah, of course. And also to change the idea, especially with the NFL, like I think there's kind of a stereotype that maybe the NFLs kind of tend to be bankrupt or tend to have mental issues. And I don't think there's this idea in the soccer players, but I think like kind of opening the conversation or especially just giving the tools to the soccer players. If they want to take it, great. If they don't want to take it, of course, great. But I think the fact that soccer players can have the certainty of a better future just by the idea, I think it's great.
And I think to transition perfect, I think whoever set up this run of show has transitioned everything perfectly. I don't know who it was, but
whoever wrote the script.
But I literally think the next topic that we should get into now is Salford City with David Beckham and Gary Neville making the news. As I've mentioned it kind of throughout the episode, they originally, to give some context around it, originally invested in the club and really made it, I would say, like the underdog Man United club, because it really was the class of 92 that originally invested in it. It was Beckham, Neville, and then Giggs, Scholes, and Phil Neville. So the full group of them all originally invested. And I think it was kind of one of those like nostalgia moments, you could say, where it's like, oh, look at the class of 92 is coming back together. They're really going to make a difference for a club who was, I think, quite far down. I'm trying to pull up the exact statistic, but I think they were in the 8th tier of English football, if I'm not mistaken.
Down, they were buried into the low divisions.
Yeah, so basically, at the time, looked fairly positive. Didn't end up necessarily going that way. I think they had struggles from the financial side of things. I think in terms of the actual on the field promotions, they did quite well. I think it's 4 promotions in 5 seasons post the 2014 takeover. Now a stable League Two club. So they've gotten up into the EFL. They've done, I think, what was the objective. But now I think what's happened now is David Beckham and Gary Neville have been a part of a new group that has fully acquired Salford. So the rest of class of 92 aren't a part of this. But I think it's almost that next step where I see Wrexham going in the near future as well, where Wrexham has brought in quite a few new people into the ownership group to allow that extra funding. Look, the Hollywood money that you're making can only take you so far in the English pyramid.
Exactly.
Eventually, you start competing globally. You've got the Saudi funds, you've got the large American funds that are a part of this, and I think this is very much following suit with that.
Yeah, and I think the last bullet, the losses bullet, like summary, perfect. And I think is the next step that Wrexham is going to have. When you have so much exposure and commercial or global commercial exposure, of course, the money is the most essential part. Wrexham was managed by the image of two like kind of famous stars. But once you get into the top leagues that have some financial aspects more detailed, you really need to have people that are more familiar with these aspects. And the fact that you have David Beckham or Gary Neville's face is not enough to cover the financial aspects. And I saw like in LinkedIn like 2 weeks ago a new some type of content that said that Wrexham is really going to struggle in the next year because they are really projecting huge losses because of this exponential growth that they have, and the fact that David Beckham and Gary Neville are kind of protecting these sides by joining with Declan Kelly and I think it's a great aspect, and well, let's see how this works. But the fact that the money's coming into low tier divisions, I think it's a great news. It's or some great news because the fine like the fact that the capital is coming to the bottom part of the pyramid instead of going into the top tier pyramid is going to help to push up all the levels of the pyramid, and I think great news. I'm a huge fan of David Beckham, Gary Neville. Although I'm not really familiar with him, the fact that in their shows or in the media, for me it's really comical. So yeah, I like it.
I think it really, like you mentioned there, it keeps the two biggest faces. So they have that, okay, we're the face of the brand. It's a David Beckham and Gary Neville club. Now you've brought in some, I would say, a little bit more serious impact in terms of a blend of kind of like the sports and financial backgrounds in some of the new investment as a part of the new investment group. So you have that financial backing. And I think Gary Neville said it himself. They want to be financially stable within 4 to 5 years, which is that's a big ask. I think if you saying it is one thing, but doing it is another, especially when you have a 25% increases in losses year over year. But I think losses almost sounds negative when really what you're looking at it's an investment. They were investing a ton of money to get to where they are. And I think that can be flipped into a more financially stable model.
Yeah, and there's a saying in finance that kind of states this perfectly. You can operate with losses, but you cannot operate with cash flow. And the fact that there is no problem with cash flow, I think the fact that they are surrounded with financial or more structured finance people, and the fact that they have cash flow, I think it's really achievable. maybe not in 4 or 5 years, but in less than 10 years to be profitable. When they get more punch or more power or more or a bigger seat into the naming rights or a bigger merchandising bubble or something, I think it's really achievable. David Beckham, even though it's an ex-soccer player, he really now knows about the financial aspects of a football club. So I think they shouldn't be worried. They should be like kind of occupied with this new project.
And I really liked what you said, where the investment is coming in the lower leagues of English football. Still the fourth tier, so still some bit a ways away from the first tier.
Yeah.
But I think it's starting to show maybe a bit of a new trend where you had the likes of Wrexham, you had Tom Brady obviously getting involved in the lower leagues, even like someone like Michael B. Jordan and their group with Bournemouth, where Everton now with I think it was Jason Kidd who joined the ownership group there. You're starting to see, look, it's not the like top investments like a Liverpool or a Man United or a Man City. People are starting to find
or Radcliffe investment in Manchester United.
Yeah, that's another good example. I think you're starting to see people realize there's probably two sides to this. One, they're getting maxed out where you can't easily invest into a top club anymore. So now you're having to go down and see, okay, where does the value lie? But I think as the overall pyramid for English football, it's really promising because you're getting these groups that are passionate and want to make it to the Premier League. And if they have the right mentality and they can take time to understand the culture and the way football works, I think it's promising. And then I think the second point that I wanted to cover in terms of like where you can actually provide this value to cause this 25% increase in losses to kind of reverse that, I think you have to look at the commercial aspects of the game. So we spoke with last week with Wrexham and how they're building their new stadium to I think like 55,000 in attendance, which is a full-on Premier League stadium that will be in the championship. But then that allows for some of those things you were saying, naming rights, obviously match day revenue as a whole, just in terms of tickets will improve. And I believe Gary Neville mentioned the same thing in this regard, where the investment will very much go into not only the team, the staff, but also the facilities. I think if you look at an academy is so important, for example, where you're actually starting to produce talent that then goes on to higher leagues or to the Premier League and then can sell on it. And that's really, I think in the MLS, you've seen that model start to really, really work now, where you're starting to see at least 2-3 top players each year go on to Europe and make a name for themselves. And I think if you can do that at this level as well, it's a very similar model.
It's investment, just like that. Just like be smart where you put the money in. Not everything comes from signing big players or putting a big star into the team. You should invest smart in the academy, in the facilities as well. Many top tier teams are investing in their facilities. Leicester, Bournemouth, Man City as well, I think. So yeah, I think that like when you put the money into the base of the pyramid, no matter if it's a league or a whole federation or a company or however you're going to put it, if you put it into the base or in the low part of the pyramid of whoever we're talking about, I think the effect on this is that the high part of the pyramid is going to grow, and especially when the base is so low, the increase is going to be so big. Just to put it in a small example, comparing Salford City versus Wolverhampton. Salford City in a year generates $10 versus Wolverhampton that generates $100. If Salford grows this $10 to $20, there's 100% increase. And if Wolverhampton,
I can put an actual stat line behind it. So Wrexham we did last week, they've grown 4,900% since the Ryan Reynolds takeover. That is an absurd number.
Which team of the top tier teams is going to grow to that number?
Yeah, it's impossible.
No. So that's why I think the investments are coming to the downside, because the potential of growing is infinite comparing to the top tier teams.
The last point that I'll give on this is we spoke about women's football last week, and I think that's another key space where you look
Definitely.
at a team. It's funny you brought up Wolverhampton, but they were denied getting promoted into the championship, the women's team. And I think if you can really, there's still that gap where if you take time, especially on the European side of things, and you invest in your women's side of the club, and you really build a name for yourself, I think there's huge growth potential. You look at the London City Lionesses as an individual property that have done so well in that regard. And I think if you can kind of build on that and continue to grow with the names of Beckham and Gary Neville and kind of what they've been able to do, I think there's truly unlimited potential. And I think Europe is still a little bit behind in terms of that side of things. I think the US has done really well in capitalizing on the women's market. And I think there's still so much room to grow, but women's sports as a whole is just an exciting time. So I think if you do invest in it, not only will you get the commercial value, but you'll also just get the communal value of like people wanting to learn more and find out about the women's sport as a whole.
Yeah, it's a global trend, and it's funny that we also the guy that wrote this script is going to be like, it's a genius. But I'm going to the Liga MX final on Monday, so yeah, like I'm going to see from my own eyes the growth that the women's league here in Mexico has been having over the past years, and I think this just reflects a global trend in the US, in Mexico. You can see also in Europe, kind of with the Women Champions League. So I think also the low tier divisions teams and the female part of the sports are huge investments opportunity for. I'm not saying the people that have the big bucks, but also for many of the mortals of us, because they are so kind of behind the global trends that they are really affordable if you want to put it like that, but they're really affordable, and the potential is huge.
No, I think you're very fair with that. So Iker, another good episode, another good roundup of what's been happening this week. Any last words from your end, and then we can wrap things up. But thanks again. I really appreciate you coming on.
No. I think we spoke perfect about this. The script, as I said, was perfect. The way we jump into different topics was perfect. Thank you so much. I enjoy a lot speaking with you, speaking with the people that are listening to us. So yeah, nothing much to said. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think you spoke. We spoke a little bit before the episode, but your friends gave a lot of feedback last time. So
For sure.
If they have feedback, first of all, for Iker's friends, thank you for listening. I'm sure you guys are big appreciative of the effort that you guys have to listen in on these episodes. But if anyone has feedback in terms of the sort of the different format that we've been doing here, I think there's definitely something that we can build on, and I'd love to continue the conversation. So
put it in the comments.
With the comments, with the reels that we'll be posting throughout the week, feel free to comment and continue the conversation, because I think these are some interesting points, and the football industry is always growing. There's always something happening, so definitely an exciting time. But Iker, thanks again, and we'll speak soon. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. Just one quick shout out, Sports Capital Hub. That's my personal page that it's my project. I speak about football, well, not the football industry, but the whole sports industry, the financial and the business side. So don't forget to give a follow and chat. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
I'm glad you brought it up. The links will be down below, and of course we'll have you tagged in all the reels and everything that we have for this episode. So thanks again, and we'll speak soon. Okay?
For sure.
Cheers.
Thank you.